Welcome to this Last Mile Profits video, the last word on the last mile. The big last mile names are already planning for peak season. To find out more, stay tuned. Modern Expo provides an integral ecosystem of screen-operated lockers, screenless autonomous solutions, refrigerated lockers, and even personal parcel lockers, powered by in-house developed software. Gary, it's coming up to that time of year again. The P word seems to be more and more important. Well, any sort of thoughts from your end on that?
Well, I'm always surprised at how early the planning for this seems to start. I mean, when I go into the supermarket now, I see the big tubs of chocolate for Christmas are already in there, and it's the 1st of September. So I don't know whether it's that triggers the carriers to get back to the office and go, hang on, we need to think about how we're going to do it. But I'm seeing earlier and earlier preparation for peak all the time, really. And it's really quite interesting.
But do you know what, Gary? I have to say, and maybe I'm a bad boy here, but when I talk to some of our clients, I actually say that if you haven't got your peak plan completely ready by the end of August, you're in trouble. You know, in that sense, I think peak is becoming bigger and bigger. You know, e-commerce is more important. The fourth quarter is ever more significant. And if you get it wrong, you're in trouble. So in a way, is it not justified?
I think it probably is. I mean, for organisations that are trying to work with the carriers, though, this kind of enforced lockdown period is getting longer and longer and longer. So if you're hoping to supply them with something, or if you're going to add PUDO points or out of home locations into their network, if you haven't got them ready by September, then they're going to turn you away. And so we're not interested. Come back in January. They're locking down the routing really, really early, and it's making the sort of seasonality of the industry even more pronounced. You know, if you're not sat in front of the CTO in January with your solution and getting their roadmap to be delivered by the summer and tested before the autumn, then you've missed your chance. You know, so it's forcing a very, very rigid way of working with them.
You actually, I think, had a good example from the UK. We probably won't mention names, but I think it's quite an interesting scenario that's probably worth mentioning.
Yeah, one of the huge carriers. They are being super, super cautious this year. I think they had some fairly well publicised challenges last peak, and this peak they're just not going to let it happen again. The focus on quality is there, and like you said in the previous broadcast, they've all worked really hard to grow capacity to get for the huge uptick we saw during the COVID period. That capacity is still there, so the pressure to grow the organisation isn't. So therefore, their focus is absolutely come back to quality, 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 and by doing that, they're bringing it in earlier. But it does remind me of I don't really do sport, as you know, Marek. But one of my favourite sporting quotes is from Mike Tyson. You know, when people said when they get in the ring with him, he says, "Well, yeah, what's the plan?" He says, "Everyone's got a plan until you punch them hard in the mouth." And I think all the carriers have got a plan until it snows, and there's almost nothing that can mitigate for weather. So that will be interesting to see how the weather shapes up in the next quarter as well.
Well, I have to be fair. Having spent half of my life in the UK, I think there are places that are better prepared for snow, perhaps certainly than the southern part of the UK.
Oh no, I'm absolutely convinced that the British are never prepared for whatever the weather is. If it rains, no one has an umbrella. If it's windy, things fall over. If it's sunny, we get sunburn. If we get a flake of snow, the entire infrastructure falls apart. I don't know what weather we're actually expecting, but it's never the weather we actually get.
Tends to match my sort of memories, but I'll tell you something. You know, you can't control natural disasters, and unfortunately, if you look at what's happening worldwide now in terms of the weather, it's becoming more and more difficult to predict. And you know, the sort of quite dramatic weather-based events that are happening, sometimes you just cannot plan for them.
No, I think it's the one variable you can't mitigate for. So what the carriers are really clearly doing is mitigating for all of the others. You know, so they've got very, very advanced plans. Their routing is absolutely locked down. The capacity management is there. You saw every announce that they're hiring 5,000 additional people to help deliver parcels over the peak period. As you know, I worked at Royal Mail for 5.5 years. About now, we normally see their advertising for 18 or 20,000 seasonal workers to help with their operation. So, they're putting the resources in, they're spending the money, and they're protecting customer experience.
Absolutely. I mean, I would honestly hope that out of home plays an ever more important role, because out of home is a good way. It means there are fewer places that you need to reach. It's more efficient. There's first time delivery. Even if someone's not home, it works. But the other thing I would say is that I've worked with a few companies where, around this time already, there was a 10-page, really well thought out plan, not just the operational plan, but communications. How do you communicate with your customers saying, look, it is a peak time, so think before you call. Do you really need to call if it's 20 minutes late? Can you
Yeah.
use out of home? Do you need to order something super fast at that period of time? Is it not better to think a little bit ahead? So in terms of consumer information, also in terms of internally sort of prepping people, supporting them. So I think that good organizations are really getting their act together much, much more. But it's a big deal. And, you'd think, oh, peak plan, sit down, it's a half an hour jobby. It's not. It's really something that demands time, interdepartmental cooperation, and, something close to our hearts. Strategically, you must have good out of home to make it work.
No, I completely agree. I mean, what's interesting is the public generally don't think about it at all. They expect things to continue as normal. They might be a heavier user, but they're maybe not completely conscious of the huge changes that happen in the background. And the carriers are pretty good. They don't change their promise either. If it's next day in August or February when it's quiet, then it's next day in November and December as well. The other thing, and I'm sure you're going to say we'll have a future discussion on this, is the massive impact of Black Friday. How this kind of focus around 1 week of e-commerce, when it first came out, the first couple of years, that put massive strain on the carriers, and they have kind of made it Black Friday week or Black Friday month, and kind of spread the impact over it a little bit. So it'd be interesting to see whether now we're in these sort of cash-strapped times where the bargain of the year is even more attractive than it has been in the past.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and probably if there's something that I think we should share more with the consignee, the consumer, is their role is really important, not just in terms of choosing efficient and ecological points of collection, such as PUDOs or lockers, but also thinking twice before they call to complain. So great, I think there is no doubt Black Friday will be a topic for the future. Maybe we should wait for around Black Friday, then we can have some real up-to-date info on what's happened.
Exactly. I like to collect what are the worst special offers you've been sent as well. So we can talk through a few of those on a broadcast and see.
Thanks for watching this Last Mile Profits video. For more up-to-date last mile news and analysis, subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on LinkedIn.